Well, hello everybody. I'm here a little bit early. Excited to share with you window painting class. So we'll get going in just a minute or two. Well, hello everybody. Oop, I'm gonna have to mute this so I don't hear myself talk. Excited. Mute. I'm done. So when you hear me talking, I think you guys hear it live or exact. I have a little bit of a delay. So if you have a comment, it may be a minute or two before I see it. All right, it's almost 11 o'clock Central Time on March 11th. Hey Mandy, welcome, glad to see you here. So this will be recorded so you can come back to this technique, this video, as often as you like. Or if you're like me, you kind of forget about some class videos and find them a year later. It's like Christmas all over again. That's just how art is. So this is a fun place. I hope that you have fun today. My goal is to have fun. I just raced home. We had my grandson Walter turned 4, but we all had COVID. So we rescheduled his birthday party 2 or 3 times. So we just gave him his presents, had a little birthday breakfast, and now I'm home and ready to get going. And Sunday, my grandson Carson turned 6. So it's a birthday weekend. And I'm glad to get their presents out of my craft room so I have a little bit more room. So in the camera, you can see this was the example that I did. And I think I said watercolor paper for supplies, which is what I'm going to use. I have watercolor paper waiting for me right here. But I think I was wrong. And I really like, I'm going to bring this up closer to the camera. It might take a second. This paper that I actually used the first time was out of a journal, the Dina Wakley, and every one of her journals have different papers in them. But this was from the extra large journal. And if you see the little lines in there, that's the texture from that paper. And I think it was considered a canvas paper. So I just cut them out of the journal and I work with these papers. But today I'm not going to do that. I will use watercolor paper and it's going to be beautiful also. And I also wanted to show you just another example after you've done the window painting technique. Here's a painting that I did, and you can see it was from this full-size piece of journal paper. And this started out as a window painting as well. So I had a bunch of different colors in the background, and then I drew my tulips. And then instead of painting white, I challenged myself. I said, let's paint a different color background. So I painted the background in purples. And then I did my outlining. So that might be another class that we do, kind of window painting class version 2, that we color it with a different background, and we'll all, and together we'll just draw some tulips. So, but I thought I'd show you that this is a pretty versatile technique that once you have completed a window painting, you'll be able to do lots and lots. So I'm going to get this out of the way. And I thought I would also cover some basic tools. So I want to use a smaller stencil, and you really won't see it, but it's going to create this depth in the background. So I chose one that has 3 choices. I'll probably go with the smallest of all, but we'll see. Art is kind of intuitive when you're in the moment. And I have pencil. And then I'm not sure if you guys are familiar, but I think I actually used a Stabilo awl. So if you have a Stabilo awl with you, you might want to grab that. The pluses to the Stabilo is that when you're drawing on paint, paint is resist, and if you have a wet wipe, if you don't like what you drew, it should pretty much wipe away. On a graphite pencil, it's not going to wash away, but it is a smaller mark, right, so that you can see it, and it's permanent. It's not going to wash away. The issue with the Stabilo is once you start painting around that pencil drawing, depending on what type of artist you are, you may not like that it's going to muddy because it's going to get wet with that white paint. I don't mind it. To me, it makes it look like I did a lot of professional shading, and I didn't. It's just the effect of that Stabilo pencil washing away. So if you have it, I'd have that and your regular pencil, and we can experiment with both and just kind of see what you like better. I think art is a lot about experimenting and finding the techniques that you like the best. I also have just a variety of acrylic paints. They're kind of off the camera, so I'll pull them closer. Just a basic rainbow that I'm going to work with, and then I have neons. Got a neon blue, green, yellow, orange, and then I have a pink that I'm going to work with today. So I've got my neons. Neons are quite popular lately. And then I'll have a basic white that we'll be painting at the end. I have black, but I don't think I'm going to need black today. All right, and I have a bunch of paint brushes. A couple variety and sizes will be nice, and I'll show you why in just a minute when we get going. I also have a variety of my black and white pens, which we'll use when we get to doodling. And the power of a class that's recorded is you can take your time and just kind of watch me the first time and then go back and watch it and do it yourself. Or you can play along with me, and then, you know, if you get behind, you can catch up with the video later. Or you keep up with me and you experience it, and then you get to rewatch it. So I really like this mode of teaching. I love in-person teaching too, but this I think has a nice value for your investment, right? That you can have it available ongoing. Okay, the other thing, and I'm going to share this just from my own mistaken experiences. I'm going to see if this shows up on camera, but I looked up on Amazon. These are basic frame sizes, and a couple of times I've done some painting on just some cut pieces of paper, and you know, I make a lot of bad art, and I either paint over top of it, or I throw it away, or cut it up into pieces. And every once in a while, when you get warmed up, you make some good art. And I found that the good art that I made a couple of times, it was on an odd size piece of paper that you would have to take it to a custom framer to fit that dimension. And it's not, my art is not worth that custom framing investment. So if you can think ahead as you're making art, and today you can certainly work in an art journal, which I have one handy. But if you can start off with a basic dimension, then you can get pretty affordable frames if there's something that you like and you'd like to frame. So this actually is an 8x10. And if I got to going on this piece of watercolor paper, I might have an oddball size. So I'm going to trim this watercolor paper that I'm going to work in today, and I'm going to trim it real quickly to an 8x10. And I waited to do that just so I wouldn't forget to tell you my learning experience. There's no such thing as a bad experience, but a learning experience. So there's my 8x10. Okay, and let's see if I can keep that on camera. So I'm getting ready to get going. I will tell you on this first stage, if you can keep your paint not thin, watered down, but thinner layers, we want time to, we need them to dry. You can certainly use a heat gun if you have one. The only thing is I'm averse to heating acrylic paint because acrylic paint is plastic. I think it affects, certainly it'll be pretty, but I think it will change the values or the tones or the texture. If you heat it too long, it'll bubble up, and sometimes that's fun. But in this case, we want to be able to, if we can, the optimal thing to do is to let it dry by air. So the thinner we put the paint on with our dry brush, I think the better it's going to be for the effect. I also do have a package of wet wipes. I think I have one wet wipe left, and I will be doing finger painting with my neon paints. I just like to put neon paint on with my fingers, and then I'll clean off my fingers after it's all done. So without telling you too much about the road we're gonna go down, I think we're ready to go. I just like to give you an idea of where we're going. I really don't enjoy classes where I'm completely blind. I think sometimes it affects my choices in art. And then I don't like my finished product. And what I've taught myself in those cases is this class, if I were sitting down new, I wouldn't expect to have a finished piece that I love today. And if you do, it's a bonus. But this experience is about giving yourself a chance to see and learn and do once, and then do it again, and then do it again, and then, you know, practice the same thing 5 or 6 times and see what the difference is. And I would love for you to post some of your finished products. You can post in this group. You can share your pictures, questions, comments. I will monitor it. I should get a notification about what's going on, and I'm happy to share my experience. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good, but I'm always happy to share it. So with that, I'm going to start putting some paint on my little palette. I also have some paper towels. If you don't have those, it's kind of nice to be able to wipe something away if necessary. And so again, thin layers of paint, because we're going to do a couple layers. And I'm just going to put a little bit here out on my little sheet. And I'm going to try to put my worms in one area. And again, you don't have to think this much. They just are, I set them up in order. I had to be ready to go before I left for the birthday breakfast. And then I had to get my heat on in this little craft room because it's separate heat, and get my beverage ready. I've got 2 beverages going. What's everybody else have for painting beverages? For your art, what's your favorite? Let's see, I've got leftover a little bit coffee left in a thermos that I took with me, or a travel mug. And I have got a Diet Mountain Dew. I'm out of my favorite carbonated waters, so my husband's on his way to Sam's to get us restocked. Look at that fun rainbow. Doesn't that just make you happy? It's a dreary, rainy day here in Omaha. March, we're ready for spring, but I don't think March is ready for spring yet. So those are the colors I just had handy. So this is what I've got, and I'll show you what I would like to do, and then you can follow along. So I've got a larger brush here. I'm just going to start with my orange, and I'm just going to put a little orange in the upper corner, just messy. See how thin that is? You can still see the paper through the paint. And if I stick with the same colors, I should be able to drag now my orange right into my pink. I'm going to put some pink over here, and it might look a little coral. I'm fine with that. I'm going to take another little piece of my orange that I had left just to bring it down at the bottom. And now I'm going to take the lighter pink, and I'll kind of blend it on top of my orange. I'm going to go to the darker. And really all I want to do is have a variety of colors. And now I'm going to get into my pools and backfill. Oop, I got yellow. That's kind of the blender. So I'm going to try to clean this pretty good before I hit my yellow. I want to keep my brush dry for as long as I can before I throw it into some water. It just changes the texture. So here comes yellow. And we can reload more paint here. It's just my first pass. Coffee. Karen's got coffee. And see these little ridges that I had left? I'm going to smooth those out because those could take a while to dry, which is a lovely effect. But for today's sake, so that we don't have to just sit and chat while we wait for our papers to dry, I'm making sure that I put it on pretty thin. So here I'm going to come in with some blues. And because I've allowed the warm colors to dry, now I can put in my blues and not worry if I go over top of an opposite color, I won't make brown or mud. And a little brown is okay too. And again, I'm just cleaning my brush as much as I can. I want to keep it dry for as long as I can. Now I'm going to throw a little green, and I think I did grab a little bit of the dark on the side of my brush. Isn't that pretty? All by itself. Another thing you can do by making a window painting is if you are working in your art journal, you know we always have leftover paint. If you have a piece of this paper to the side, you can keep cleaning off your brush through the days, and then in a couple of sit downs you have one of these pieces ready made, ready to go. This is pretty dark, so I don't want to overwhelm or take away. Okay. Let's see. I think now I've got to dip my brush into some water and clean it up. But you see how when you start from the warms and work your way down to the cools, you can work with a dry brush for quite a while. All right. So I think that green is pretty dark. So I'm going to I'm letting that dry, but it's drying pretty quickly because I've put it on thin. And I'm going to lighten it up again. So I'm going to take a little bit more yellow. And I liked that light blue, so I'm going to grab the light blue. And I don't think I have very much orange, so I'm going to throw some orange back in it. There's an artist, and I don't know who it is, but they said you can't fake layers. So the way to get layers is you have to paint layers, which is a good thing to remember. So I'm going to just throw a little bit more orange right on top of this green now. And it's not opaque, but it's okay. It's adding interest. Again, I'm still putting it on thin. And we're going to come back with neons, so don't worry about that either. When I get a ridge of paint, I smooth it out for today's experience. Okay, now I'm going to take my yellow, and I'm going to start at the bottom first, just so it's got a little bit more of the bolder colors instead of the leftover brush clean. That's the only reason I'm doing it. You could flip around your page too. So I'm just bringing some of the more solid colors in. Making sure that everything's been filled in. And again, almost all of my paint is already dry. The more little specks of color that we have, then the more variety of colors we'll be able to get when we make our window and it peeks through. So really, this background is what's going to be peeking through your window of flowers. All right, since I don't want to waste any paint. I've got a little bit of my pinks left on my mat, and then I'll grab some more. But I'm gonna get a smaller brush and I'm going to take what's left of this pink and I'm gonna make some marks now. But I want them to be as smooth as possible. And I'm just daubing my tip of my brush, spreading it out a little bit so it's not going to take 3 hours to dry. And I'm just making some marks. There aren't any right ways or wrong ways to make marks. It's just going to add a lot of it might be covered up with white paint. And I may cover some of this up with my neons. I just didn't want to waste this paint. And we'll do some more mark making after we've got the neons on. There's no reason to waste good paint. So that's what we'll be doing with our smaller brush, whatever variety you have. Anybody have questions so far? I know I have a couple of you live with me. Thank you so much. It's so nice to have you here. I don't see any questions coming, but I'll check back in a minute. So now is the time we're going to play with some neon. Neon is really trendy right now. There's lots of fun neon products out on the market. I just ordered some of the Ranger Neon Embossing Powder. Woo! Well, that's a big boo-boo. I don't know what I'm gonna do with all that yellow. It just burst out. So don't do that. That's about all you need. We'll have to see how much of that pile is left after class and I'll throw it on. I think pink is my favorite color. What is going on with these today? Hang on a sec. There we go. Shake this one up. You know, this was in my car for a day or two. I wonder if I've got the brand new Dina Wakley. There we go. Now I'm getting some, but pink is my fave. I use a ton of pink. You don't need this much, but I had a little bit of fluidy paint, so I needed to get it where I had a little bit more substance. Here's green. Whoops. That's how the paint should come out. And then I've got an orange. Okay. So, I'm gonna get the paint off of my little fingers before I get it on my fingers. I'm gonna pull up my sleeves. Do you know how many shirts I've ruined? Well, since I have an abundance of yellow, let's just brighten it up with some sunshiny yellow. Dina's is a little heavier body, which is really fun, and it's a little bit more opaque, which is so nice. So I've got all of Dina's. I'm just using up this set that's going to get old, and you can see how it's behaving. So I'm just adding spots of brightness with my neon. I did go through all of my old gelatos and found that I had some neon gelatos. So who knew? Yeah, Karen, I like to do that too with classes. Kind of watch first, take it in, and then do my own interpretation. Look at that pink. Isn't that awesome? I think it's my favorite neon. Pink and green are a favorite combo of mine. And I found it by accident. Well, I didn't think it was a favorite combo. So that's something else I highly recommend is, you spend a day experimenting with paint combinations, and you might find one you like that you wasn't even in your wheelhouse. And again, by spreading it out thin, I won't have to wait a long time for this to dry. But we're getting the layers. Okay, and the last color I'm going to throw in here is some orange. Oh, a little white. That's cool. Happy little accident. Old Bob Ross, right? Happy accident. I think I am going to turn it now just so that I make sure I get the bottom edge up here. Let's get back to my favorite pink. Because I don't know what's going to end up peeking out of my window, and I want there to be something to look at. All right, so I've still got tons of neon. I'm going to have to use that up on something after class. And I may come back and add some neon. Ooh, you're going to have to try that iridescent. That would be beautiful, Karen. Okay, so now what I want to do is get my paint brushes, variety of tips, variety of sizes, and I'm going to take with some of my neon, and I'm going to do some mark making again. Again, I don't know what's going to peek through when we draw our flowers. And if I mix this pink with a little neon blue, it's just going to make some purple. So I'm going to do some swoops. My friend Dina Wakely calls this puke on a page. Just doing everything she can think of. Okay, let's wipe that off before I go to my light yellow. And I'm just gonna paint some circles, but try to keep them, you know, not that thick paint. And the painting that I do today is not gonna look exactly like the painting I did for the sample. I don't know if I've ever been able to exactly duplicate something that I've done before. If you had time at home, I mean, you could take paint pens, different colored paint pens, and do some more markings. That would be fun. Oh, I did that already. I need to get some green. That's not showing. Let's do down here. Yeah. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to put a stencil on top of all of this and throw some white paint through the stencil. And then we'll be ready to do some doodling. So just as detailed as you want to get on this background piece is fine. Or like the first one I showed you when I first opened up the classroom, the tulips one that I did didn't have a lot of detail, but it did have a lot of variety of paint colors. So I just do circles, I do plus signs, I do swoops, I do dots, dashes, nothing fancy. So this doesn't look like anything yet. I did have COVID, and it lasted and lasted, and not the terrible symptoms, but the exhaustion. I just didn't have any energy to do anything. And so this is a great thing to do when you want to have some art time, but you just don't have the energy to be creative or even to try. But you get to move your hand and some paint and then just set it aside and see what you want it. It could be a complete background and you paint over most of it. But you, like I said earlier, you can't fake layers. Okay, I think I'm about done with my variety of mark making. And isn't it be interesting to see what's going to peek through our windows? All right, I'm going to go ahead and clean off my brushes. Isn't that so fun? And you can make it stand out much more with, you know, bold paint pens. I'm not going to do a lot of mark making with my Stabilo because I don't want to have I don't mind my edge being a Stabilo that I'm going to work in the shading, but I don't want to make mud while I'm painting as well. So I'm going to set this aside, or I know I'm going to put my arm right in that paint. I'm going to get my white paint. And my stencil, and I'm going to put the paint through my stencil with my fingers. I'm going to pull that up a little bit better into the screen. So here's my white paint. Okay, there we go. Got it on a little paper towel. And again, I think I'm going to do the smaller design. And I'm just going to take my finger and kind of work it through. See how that's just going to add a little more pop. And I'm going right over top of some of my mark making. Come over here to the side. Now, from Diane, what I learned is if I move the stencil and keep working with that same little spot, I only have a little spot to clean. I don't have to clean the entire stencil. Which I think is a pretty cool idea. And remember, you can turn the page. You don't have to reach where it's uncomfortable. It's a little wet, so I'm just going to be careful with how I lay this to not smear away what I just did with the other white stencil. And if it, like here, I just picked up some of my blue neon that wasn't dry, and it's just going to pick up that stencil, which is just fine with me. I'm going to come down here. I really like those little swoop-de-loops. I might add a couple of more of those. Okay, I think that's enough white stenciling. She is all about cleaning. I just spent quite a bit of time with Diane. She taught at Stampers Anonymous, and that's in Cleveland, Ohio. And I'll tell you, Cleveland was quite a nice city. It was her first time back since COVID, and she had two classes, two weekends, and I was in one class. Of course, it was the first class, and in the middle of class, I texted my husband and I said, what would you think if I stayed for the second weekend? And he said, have a blast. So I did. I just killed a few days, and then I took her second class. And some of this doodling, I probably was channeling Diane. I'm going to show you. This needs to dry for maybe 2 or 3 more minutes, so I'm going to set it aside. So this was my journal on the first weekend that I did. And she showed the idea of covering it with washi tape. So that's how I did my journal cover, was with washi tape. And, oh yeah, Karen, she is traveling. In fact, she's going to be at Ranger, which is in Tinton Falls, New Jersey, the last weekend in May and the first weekend in June. So the last weekend in May is actually Memorial Day weekend, and so I'm opting to travel that next weekend. So if you'd love to join, I'd love to see you there. So this is the journal that I did. And for the first time in my life, I have a completely finished journal. But because I did so much with all of her stamps, I think, you know, subconsciously, subliminally, I had some doodle power with me. So I really loved these colors, how that turned out. Isn't that funny? So again, I you know, because I am fussy cutting these, I'm going on the journey of seeing over and over. See, I love pink and green together. And I won't take you through the whole thing, but I'm sure I was channeling some Diane. But I'm so proud of myself. This is old vintage dress pattern fronts. And then I just cut them out and put them on for my added collage. Oh, thanks, Karen. All right, enough of that. But that's kind of where I'm sure, because I immersed myself. That first week that I had COVID, all I did was sit and cut out my stamped images and glue them down. Instead of using her inks to paint, I did use my alcohol markers. All right, so we're about halfway through, but I really did get it all done. Okay, so that served the purpose to let this dry a little bit. And it feels pretty dry to my touch. So now we're going to draw. And I'm gonna do the first one with a regular pencil, and then I'll do the others with a Stabilo. So the way that I begin is I start with my circle, my little center of my flower. And then I'm going to do opposites. So I'm going to draw this petal. I don't know if you can even see it on camera. I may have to go to the Stabilo just to see it. Yep, I am. So again, I'm starting with my center. And then I'm going to go opposites. So I have a shot at balancing it out. I'm going to come here and go opposite. And if I don't get it the exact size of the petals, I don't worry about that. So now I'm going to come up between those two. Between those two. Again, you can turn your paper. And this one's not going to be quite as fat, so there's going to be a little bit more space between those. That's flower number one. So if you go opposites to make your first 4 petals, and you can just fill in between. Well, let's try, Karen. Oh, you're not drawing, you're following along. So again, just remember, start with your center petal, and I started pretty much in the middle of my page. And then I did opposite, opposite, and I filled the others in. And remember, you can hide a lot of issues with doodling later. Okay, so I'm gonna draw my next flower. So, let's see, where does a flower live here? I think I'm gonna draw one right over here. And I'm gonna stick to circle centers. All right. So it's far enough away here that I don't have to worry about bumping in. It could just be a smaller flower. So again, I'm just going to do opposite, opposite, opposite. Okay, and those are a little wonky. So I'm going to backfill that one and that one. And I'm going to call that one done. I don't think I need to fill this one and this one. That flower has its own little shape. Good, I'm glad. All right, the next one I'm gonna make is great big, so it's gonna run into the other guy, okay? So I'm gonna start with a little bit larger center. And because this paper's right here, I'm gonna draw just as though that, right? I'm just gonna draw right off my paper. Look at that. So when you take it away, your size is in the right proportion. So now I'm going to come down here and draw my other petal, and I'm going to stop at that flower, and I'm going to come here and stop at that flower. Now I think this is too small, but I'll come back and doodle to make it a little bit more balanced. I'm going to do my opposite here, and I'm going to draw all the way off of my paper. Okay, and I'm going to do this one. I don't think I'm going to have to come off the paper. Nope, that one's huge and wonky. Okay, now I'm going to backfill them. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to come over here to this flower. I'm going to stop right there because that petal's behind this flower. And I do need to give myself a little petal over here. And I just drew right off the paper. And I do think this is kind of a big gap, so I'm going to come over like that and like that. So when you take it away, it looks pretty balanced. So now today, so here's the one I did. They're really pretty different, but I'm going to bring my stem. So I'm going to start like that. So I'm just giving a little bit of a thicker edge, and I'm going to bring this one in first, and I'm going to come this way. And again, I thin out from the flower, just like that, okay? And then I need a leaf, so I'm just going to take my half circles, and this one's not going to, it's going to go off the page, because really I think this size of leaf would actually be just about like that. So you're not going to see that whole leaf for it to be in the right perspective of size. And again, if I want to make it bigger when I come back, I can add this little line here and doodle. So if you don't think you made it big enough the first time, still paint white around it, and then we'll doodle to bring it into the size that you'd like it to be. Okay? And I'm going to make one big leaf here. And don't worry about the details, we'll add that last. All right, so now I need another stem. So this guy, I'm gonna come from here, because maybe the wind's blowing these guys. Okay, and I'll give him a little leaf right here. I'm drawing right off of the page. So when you step aside and bring it back, you can see it's in a nice proportion. Okay, and then this guy, I'm going to come straight down. He's got a big stem, but there's tall flowers out there. And I don't get wrapped up into the details too much. We'll give him a leaf over here. Coming back, and again, you don't always have to come right to that point. I can come down a little bit and carry my leaf out. And I think that's plenty of drawing. Okay, so now comes the fun part and the challenge. We're going to paint all of this background that's left over in the white. So now I'm going to come bring this messy paint palette, because I don't have plan B. I'll put my white down in this corner. Get some room. I think this white needs shaken up a little bit. So I'm just shaking my paint. And you're going to want to put this on kind of a thin coat, not watery thin, but a thin coat, not thick. And some of the background's going to sneak through, which is what gives it that idea of depth. The shadows sneak through. Let me bring the sample back. So can you see some of the dark sneaks through there? And you can see some of that pink. The neon's really gonna sneak through. Okay? So I'm gonna get a clean brush, and you'll want probably a couple of sizes. One for the broad covering, and then I will want a little bit of a detail one. I don't know. I never know what I'm gonna work with. So I'm gonna start with the bigger one for now. And I'm gonna move and make sure. Yes, you could certainly use gesso. You can. And I'm going to be a little careful along my edge of my drawn stem. You see how I picked up that Stabilo? That just kind of adds some, like I'm this fancy shader. I can shade so nicely. Okay, I want a different brush. So I'm going to come in a little closer here to my leaf, and I'm painting all the way around it. And you can come back with a second coat if you want. I just want to get that design somewhat windowed. We're going to start to see what's peeking through. And on my demo one that I built the class around, I actually painted something I wasn't supposed to paint. You guys didn't notice, so it's not the end of the world. Just making sure I'm in the camera. Yep, you can see what I'm doing. All right, so now I'm going to turn my page again, and I am going to want a little bit smaller. I do like these flat brushes because it can be a broad stroke this way, or if you turn it to the side, you can get into those smaller crevices. I just accidentally kind of painted over my flower. I can fix that with my doodling. So just have fun and relax. My first window painting I ever did was with an artist named Kelly Day, I think. I think I did these in high school too, but I did a sailboat and I let the sail be what was sneaking through. So it had all this fun color in the sail. So you gotta be a little patient with yourself on all these little petals. And that's why you need kind of a variety of paintbrush sizes so you're not fighting yourself. And again, I picked up that Stabilo, and your pencil's going to work just fine for you. I just couldn't get my regular pencil dark enough for you to see it on camera. And I wasn't quite confident enough to draw it in a Sharpie marker. Just get it covered once, and if you need to come back, you think it needs to have a little bit more white, you can always come back and add some. But I'm touching down here. This is already dry. That's how thin I'm putting this paint on. And I love working with a dry brush. And you can use a white paint pen to get more details if you want to later. Now while I pulled up that Stabilo and I had kind of a dark line, I do want to get that while it's wet and get it blended in so it gets to be a shade of gray of some sort, or it'll just dry that dark line. So you don't have to buy all new supplies, just use what you have. But the resurgence in the neons, I think, are because some artists have recently released new neons. Okay, I'm getting back up into the camera here. One of the early lessons I had in neons is, when you're trying to paint more realistic flowers and you can't really get the magic of that sunshine, what God's made in nature, if you add some neon into your paint color, it kind of makes it more vibrant. So it kind of helps you bring that sunshine or that outside magic of nature into what you're painting. We might have done a painting class, a window painting. I know that if you want to get the neons from Dina, I'm sure the Busy Scrappin' would order them for you. Or any of these supplies that we've talked about today. Again, I start with these backgrounds when I want to play, but I'm just not either mentally or emotionally up to, setting down with a goal of creating something in mind, if that makes any sense. This is getting a little gunky. I'm going to wipe it off. Sometimes you just, even though you're painting, it's building up into that brush. So I'm just getting some of the extra white paint off and starting again. So I'm not carrying that extra along with me. So rather than clean my brush in water, I just wiped it off with a paper towel. So we're starting to see what's peeking through, and it's completely different this time than my last time. You guys are being so patient while I paint all this white. And my brushes were starting to break apart, the bristles in the brush. So I just kind of mashed them all together into wet paint and kind of brushed my paint hair. Got it nice and smooth again. All right, just one more spot to go. All right, so where does that leaf start? Right about there. Okay. And a lot of this Stabilo pencil, when you hit it with your marker, it will kind of set that, make it more permanent. Your marker's going to have moisture in it. If you're black on black, I'm just smoothing out some of these brush lines when my brush kind of got tangled or messy hair. It's a Saturday, we don't care about messy hair. So it does take a good amount of your white paint. Okay, so now you can see my window painting coming through, and there's a lot happening. So I'm going to tone some of this down with my doodling. So let me, now I am going to wash my paintbrush. I thought it would take about an hour to do this part, and now I'm going to spend about an hour just doodling with you. So if you get bored with this and need to go on, I understand. But I'm going to show you the steps that I take, a couple of different layers in the doodling and how I fix some things with my lines by adding my doodles. So let me get out my pens, and I'll cover some that I did on the other while I let this dry. Okay, isn't that funny? I didn't plan on this being green for the leaf, but it just turned out that way. If you want to tone down what's coming through your window, you can take some paint, and I'll just do it on one, but I've got a little bit of green neon left, so I could take this leaf here with the yellow showing, and I could paint my whole thing with the green. So the depth in the background is still there, but I have tinted it with that green neon. Or you could use regular green, but just if you have an opening in the window that you want to tone down, now that you've got it identified, you could go back and paint every one. I could pick one of these flowers and paint it with pink neon if I wanted to. Let's do that. Now I'm kind of veering off here, but you see that the window part is still peeking through, but I'm making it a little bit more cohesive by adding this one color to all the petals. And I'm not going to worry about the center. It would probably be a different color anyway. All right, so you see how I kind of brought that more together as one flower. Okay, and I did that. I'll pull back out what I started in the beginning with my tulips. So this was a window painting, and then I did go back and add over top of my window. So I've got all my layers showing through, but I did add my soft pinks to the actual tulip then to finish filling those out. And I did the same thing. After it was done, I painted my leaves and my stems green. So I hope that gives you some ideas. Okay, so I'm gonna get this set back aside, and I'll start down here where I know I didn't go back and repaint, and let's just start doodling. I do love an inexpensive Jelly Roll black pen. The only problem with these guys is they do take a while to dry, and I'm left-handed, so I tend to drag my hand into what I've just done. But let's just start by, I'm going to cover right over my Stabilo pencil, and by hitting it with a pen that's got some moisture in it, it's going to set that Stabilo a little bit. And I always have a variety out because I don't know which one I'm going to like. So I didn't like how that was going, so I'm hitting it with my Sharpie, and I like that better. All right, and right now I'm just getting all of my outlines that were in pencil more bold than the Sharpie. And I did 2 lines here, so we're already going to start with our doodling. And I'm going to add both those lines. Here's the center of my flower. Again, I'm not going to be afraid to come off my page. It just lets me be a little freer. You could put a piece of computer paper underneath there. And look, I missed there, but I'll just fix that with doodling. And I overpainted there. So I'm going to draw my original line, and that white's just going to be on the inside. I think this petal is too small, so I will fix that with doodling. Again, whatever your eye sees that you want to adjust, you can adjust in the next spot, the next step. This is a very forgiving technique, I think. Sometimes I think the pen starts to pick up some of the paint, so I clean it off just by drawing with it on a piece of clean paper. Making sure I'm still in camera. And I get to arting and I just forget everything. You got to be careful too. Sometimes I'll run into a little nub of paint. So just go with the flow. Almost forgot my little leaf. All right, we're making progress. Comes my next one. Time to clean off my marker. So you've probably seen a lot of imperfections that I've done, so go easy on yourself. This is just about having fun and seeing where it takes you. Please ask any questions that you might have. And this one I imperfectly painted white, so I'm going to draw my correct line. I've got that white showing through, and it just turns out to be a little bit of the window painting. All right, I've still got to do my stem. All right, so there we go. There's the beginning. Now we're going to add some details. I'm going to have a quick drink. All right, so now I'm going to add, before I doodle and make it all fancy, I'm going to add some detail into my flowers. So I want a vein into my leaf, but I don't want it straight on. So I'm going to do somewhat of a curve. See how that makes it look more like it might be bent or curled? And then I'm going to take my veins and I'm going to alternate side by side. And then this one I'm going to do the same thing. Come a little bit off center. I've got a little blob of paint there. And then I'm going to do my veins off center. This guy over here, I'll do the same thing. I've got one more to do. All right, now for the details for my flowers, I'm going to work on my centers first. So lots of times I'll start with like a swirl into the middle and then just kind of continue it like that. Sometimes I'll do cross hatches. Just like that. And then sometimes I do dots inside. So I think in terms of like a dice. So if I do 1, 2, then I have my center 3. I think I can get a whole one there about the same size. And then I would just half circle that one. And maybe just a very sliver of one right there. So you've got kind of a variety of pattern. So those are my centers. Now if I did my stems, there's lots of different things you could do. You could just do dots going up the stem, which I'll do on this guy. I think I'll be able to do one whole dot there. And then you could do stripes or dashes. And I kind of follow the curve of my stem. So there's that stem. And then you can, and we can make those solid or open and do more doodles within them. That's more, I've never done Zentangle, but I think this is an abbreviated version of something like Zentangle. So on this one here, I could do zigzags all the way down with little triangles. All right. Oh, let's bring this up a little bit. What do I want to do with that? Turn my, I think as I get closer, I'm going to make it a little tighter. I don't know why. Okay, so now let's look at the petals that maybe we want to fix a little bit. So I think this petal is too small. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to broaden him out with a second line. I'm going to do the same thing with this guy. I'm going to bring him down here. Just make him a little bigger. These guys don't need to be bigger, so I'm going to take the line to the inside. Okay? And I'm not going all the way to the bottom. I'm starting at the tip. This one doesn't have a lot of room to be bigger, but I'm going to try to draw two lines there. Okay, this one doesn't need to be bigger to me. And again, it's the artist eye. Okay, so even without matching doodling, you can already see that it's more in proportion. I didn't do it perfectly the first time. And then how we can bring it together is if I put lines on this one, and then I put lines on this one, your eye is going to fill in the blanks. All right, you see how they all go together even though this was white and this was painted. So this is one that I enlarged, and this is one that I did not. So right now I'm fixing my painting proportions. This one's just an illusion. Okay, now I think it's a better proportioned large flower. So this guy, I like his proportion. I think all the petals are fine. So I must have started out well and then got lazier. This one I think is a little small for the picture. So I'm going to make this a bigger flower now. Those were just like the inside petals. And I think it's easier to do and see once you have that white background. I had a little nub of paint that I had to be careful of. Don't you think that's a little bit more in proportion? And I'm going to leave this guy just like that. So everything to me seems just fine as far as proportion. I like the balance of the picture. So the rest is just fancying it up. And I'll bring this back now so you can see. So I'm going to add swoops like lace. I'm going to add white paint pen. I'm going to add dots, dashes. So let's double up our leaves now. So I've got a second layer here and a second line here. I'm going to do the same thing on this one. And if you make these a little thicker, you have room to give more decoration inside those lines. Oops, I better go this way or I'll smear my... And then because I did make this leaf a little bigger, I did add a layer of like shadow or roll of my leaf. So I'm going to do that on this one. And I'll do that one on this one. There's a lot of room there, so I'm just going to add that. And so to bring that together, you just doodle like you always meant it to be there. And this one, I'm going to clean off my pen because you do start to pick up a little bit of paint. So I'm just zigzagging across that edge. Just like that. I've got one more leaf up here. So I'm going to bring two edges, one on the inside here, because I don't want to compete with that flower. And he has two edges, because he could be a little bit bigger leaf. And I think I'll do a zigzag again. And on this one I have room to make some fun dots. So I'll start on that side, a half a dot, whole dot, half, and a half on this side. And this is where different layers of pen, different sizes of tips will give you more variety. This is a Posca paint pen. It's much bolder than my Sharpie. So just adding that with the smaller tip makes a huge difference, an impact on your art. So one of the things I can do is come around my center with this bigger pen and make these little dots around that outer ring. So that, I learned that a long time ago too, that if you use 3 or 4 different tips, fine tip, medium tip, and a bold tip of the same color and the same types of doodlings, it's going to add interest to that finished piece. So then the gel pen is going to be the finer tip. Let me see where I can show you that. So what I like to do is little scallops, like lace, using that finer tip. And what I learned by accident that I liked by fixing a mistake that I made, let me see if I have a big enough spot. Let's maybe do it along this leaf. So I have my swoops and I didn't like them, right? So what I did after these is I came back with teeny tiny swoops, and this really felt like finished lace to me. So it started out as me fixing a something I didn't like, and then I repeated it in that journal I was showing you a lot. And I think that's those accidents that we develop our art. So isn't that like a fancy lace? All right, so the other thing I want to show you is you can doodle with these all day long, but there is some power in a white pen. So I'm going to shake these up, make sure I've got a nice mixture of the fluid and the white paint pigment. And if I just came in between these lines and added my white dots, look at how that pops. And I could do the same thing by adding a line right along my fancy lace. I'm gonna watch the camera and see if that's showing up. Not sure if white's gonna show. Yeah, I think you can see the ad that it does. So same thing. I could come into this bold dots that I made up here, and I can add just a little white dot in the center of those. So I do think this takes experimentation, but I think it can be a lot of fun. So now I'm going to do some detail. And I think I'm going to go with my gel pen. So I've really got three. I've got a real bold, I've got a medium, and I've got a fine. And I'm going to come through and I'm going to add lines where I enlarge this flower. And I'm turning my paper as I go, so I don't have to twist my hand. So it doesn't look like I was fixing an error. It looks like it was all part of my plan, right? So I'll do a couple more of these petals. Again, turning the page. And do you see how I'm kind of following the curve of the petal with how I make my lines? And as I get to the top, I'm going more straight. Now I'm going to come the other way, kind of following around those petals. All right, so I'm going to turn the page and keep going. I'm going to come this way so I'm not dragging my left hand. And again, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to draw off of the paper onto my scrap underneath so it doesn't have that awkward start and stop. So slightly curved around the side of the petals, straightening out a little bit, and then coming back the other way. Straightening out, coming back the other way. All right, and that flower is done with the stripes. I showed you the scallop, so now I'm going to stay consistent, and I'm going to put the scallops around all of them. And it really doesn't take that long. You can do this kind of doodling while you're watching a movie, listening to podcast or whatever you do for entertainment, music. Tips. Well, tell me, why do you think your flowers are not turning out the way you'd like them to turn out? So let's compare. These flowers don't look anything like these flowers, and yet they look somewhat alike, right? Yeah, those are great. They definitely don't look like a flower. Well, maybe relax your hand a little bit. Sometimes if I'm tense, then even if I want to draw, because mostly a flower is almost an oval or a teardrop, so maybe just practice drawing some teardrops for a little bit. Because it's really just a center and a teardrop and another teardrop. And then we're going to blend them in. So try teardrops. The other thing you can do is more of a square, like a triangle. Those are fun. So even if I crisscross, and then I'm just going to draw more of a straight line like that. And get your big center, which you can doodle, scratch, scratch. So is that an idea, Mandy? Maybe try teardrops? All right, back to doodling. So now I want to add the interest in that flower on that I was just doing my crosshatches. So I'm gonna go every other one in white. And that's a little too bold of a point. I have a smaller white. There we go. I have a little bit more control, but I didn't shake it up. And I'll have to come back now and bring those black lines back into play. And what I'm going to do is color black on the others. I think that's dry enough for me to come and bring the black in. So I think I'll go with my Sharpie. I have a little bump of paint there. I don't sweat it. And another thought, I don't know how I'll do it or not do it, but I don't want to doodle so much that you don't see the bright that's coming through. So I really had to limit myself on how much doodling I did. I mean, I could have really filled this in, but I wanted to let all of the colors come through with just a little doodling for interest. So I'm just coming back now with black to give you an idea of what this would look like when it's a whole flower. Isn't that fun? Looks like we worked so hard at it. So I like to start with the white first because then I can crisp it up with the black next to it. And you need to allow time for these to dry too, because they're paint. And every so often you want to shake it just to keep that liquid with the pigment of the paint so that you've got a nice opaque white. So I'm just going to stay on a roll with my white for a little bit. I know it's probably hard to see some of these because I'm painting over white paint, because this is the flower that I made larger by adding that extra layer. I'm going to get back up in the camera a little bit. So remember my tips from opening up. If you can kind of keep, if you're working in an art journal, that's a great thing to do. If you're working on a piece of paper and you think it might accidentally turn into something, then stay with your basic frame sizes so that you're not creating something you have to cut down or have professionally matted and framed. You can get some really affordable frames at places like Amazon, Walmart. Gotta get my sample one out of the way. Okay. See it coming together? Now, I see a place that I don't like it's not crisp, so you can come back with another finer tip and clean that up a little bit. Don't sweat the small stuff. And it's all small stuff. So each pen has its job, just like I believe each different type of glue has its job. And it just takes experimenting to get an idea of what each one is good at, and then let them do their jobs. So I am working on my next little art class, and you can do these art projects in an art journal or on a piece of media paper or watercolor paper. I just need to find, not everybody has a stamp, so are you guys still with me? Give me a comment if you're here. It looks like I had a little glitch. And I think it might be because I had an incoming call again. I didn't put it on Do Not Disturb. I'll bet you guys are still here. I'm going to watch for comments for a second. I look like I'm going, so I'm going to start coloring again. And I'm going to hit refresh just in case, because I'm not seeing comments anymore, but Facebook can be a little silly. Okay, now I can see comments. There we go, now comments are on the side. You guys can, one of you comment and let me know if you can still see me. Looks like I lost one of you. All right, I'm gonna keep going. I think the replay will be just fine. I'm going to show you as many things that I can think of that I do for doodling. And then this class will be a wrap. Get this guy finished up. A reminder too, thanks Karen, the first one I did was, I thought it was watercolor paper, but it was actually, it's really cool. I'd love to get more of this. It's out of Dina's extra large journal and it's canvas. So it had kind of more of a crisscrossy canvas texture. And then I did this one on watercolor paper. And again, they're both, they have their own finishes, their own texture, I guess I would say. So it all works. Mixed media paper would work great too. I don't know if that extra large album or journal is still being made. I'll have to look. So I don't know if you noticed too, I just had to go off and clean off the tip of my Sharpie because it's going to gradually scrape off some of the paint as it's coloring over it. It's not wet, but it's just getting that dry film over top of it. So remember to clean as you go, as needed. All right, so that one is done. Maybe not done, but that piece of it's done. So see how it doesn't matter that you can add, and by doodling, you're going to blend the pieces together, even if part of it was white, and then part of it was the window painting coming through. You can make it uniform, bring it all together. Oh, great idea, Karen. Yeah, I don't know if it's just because something new, but I really had fun with painting on that texture. All right, so I'm going to color in these dots. And you can kind of change the shape of your dots as you color them if you want to. Make them bigger or smaller. I don't know if you noticed too, but I had larger dots here and I got smaller as I got down. And this is just like a polka dot right there. Okay, I'm going to take my finer white tip, give it a shake. And you guys, as I think of it, I gotta tell you, So the other thought I have, it's really fun to paint and doodle with metallic. So like a metallic gold, a metallic silver. Those are super fun. So this, I'm actually going to color this in white. And I'll come back and sharpen it up. And this all just kind of brightens everything up. I'm going to let that dry before I come back and add some detail on that. So the other thing you can do is you can, in the larger parts, you can add some detail. And again, I said I wanted to limit my detail because I want to see what the window painting was showing through. But this is a large area, so I could certainly add a little bit in there. Maybe tone down that reddy orange a little bit. And you know, God doesn't make everything perfectly uniform, so I don't care if one's got less dots than the other. And I'm going to take my black Posca, which is my boldest, and I'm going to come around those dots. And I just think the black kind of anchors, the bigger bold kind of anchors that image onto the leaf. I'm going to come around with that same bold tip. I'm going to go ahead and color in my center vein. I think you call them veins on a leaf. Just make it a little bolder. Make sure I'm still up in the camera. I am good. The other thing I just did and didn't think to say it as I did it is, like, if I'm going to draw this line here, I will bring my pen down into the vein and then up into the line. So it gives it more of a fluid feeling instead of a start and stop. See how that finishes that off? I'll do it on the other side too. So you come up and into the line. All right, so now that this is dry, I'm going to take my bold paint pen and outline that white that I just did. I'm going to let that dry before I would do anything more with it. Add a little paint bump. So I had to slow it down, just like a bump in a road. You have to slow down if you hit that bump. All right, I'm going to turn this all the way upside down now. And I'm going to bring a little detail into this cute flower that we didn't do anything with. So I'm going to come in and do a second and come more to a point on each of those petals. Kind of like that teardrop we were talking about. So I think that's, I mean, I'll do some smaller doodles around it, but that's plenty of layers so that we still see all the fun, bright colors peeking through. And then on this large one, he's got so much going on and he's so big that I think all I'm gonna do with him is what I did with the other large one, is I'm gonna add dots. So I'm gonna add some interest, but I'm not gonna get it so busy because I think he's got plenty going on. And we've got the dots in the center as well. So let's color those in black. So we start to see what's going on. Because dots might be too much on this one, dots and dots. I'm going to finish what I've already committed to here. And I'm losing the power of this pen, so I'm going to clean my tip and prime it again. Now it's happy again. All right. I think I can use just a sliver down there to balance that out. It felt a little unbalanced to me. So I'm going to go ahead and outline my center with this bold. I'm kind of waiting for inspiration. I'm going to stick with my original, but I'm going to make them really large. So here's a half of a polka dot. Here's a big polka dot. And here's a quarter polka dot. It's a big polka dot. I'm trying to place the large full ones in different spots on each petal. Yeah, I don't think that's going to be too many. That's the concern I had, was that this was going to look too polka dotty. I can get almost a whole one there. I think the key is going larger on these. Less is more. You can always go back and add, but it's hard to undo. I think this one needs one right there. All right, so there's my polka dot. So now I think the one in the center needs some visual interest. So I'm just going to start first by adding a dot in the center. That's not a bold enough pen. Get my bigger one. Shake it up. Yeah, that's breaking that up. See how it brightens it up a little bit? All right, I want to try with my real fine one now. I have an idea. I guess I want to commit to it. And I'm just going to put some thin lines cross hatch. Nothing perfect. And I'm purposely going outside the lines of my circle. So again, I want to remind you of the power of different thicknesses of pens, even in the same color. How a bold, a medium, and a fine can help give you some visual interest without overwhelming the page. I don't know if you noticed, but I drew those lines right off the page onto what I have underneath. Gives you a little bit more freedom to move with conviction. All right, let's take a step back. That's the other thing, is once you've gotten, I mean, I'm really up close, doodling and looking close. Before I accidentally overdo, I take a step back and take a look. Yeah, it was kind of subtle, huh? I like it. Here's kind of a corny thing, but the other thing you can do is ask your painting, what more do you want? I mean, try to get involved in the process, because I think it is kind of a back and forth. The painting to me, me back to the painting. So what does it want? So I do think this one definitely needs to continue to be brightened up with white. You could certainly add gold metallic. If I had one handy, I'd grab it and show you. But if you don't, black and white are very effective. Here's something that I've done before, is if you just do teeny tiny dots at the crosses. So again, tiny, but it helps take what was dark and brighten it up. So that was what I came up with by just taking a step back, and the idea came to me. So give your art and yourself a chance to respond back and forth to each other. And now this one, I think you've got all in the center, so I need to come at the ring and do one or two just to balance it out. This definitely needs cleaned. This pen may be out of ink. I may use the white Posca. Let's see if I can find it. Oh no, it's working again. Man, don't forget to prime your pens. They just get tired, but when they work right, they work fantastic. But they need fresh ink at that tip. They need blended, so you've got that paint pigment flowing. Come back where it wasn't working. Look at the difference. Let your tools work for you. I am not being careful and exactly perfect, because your eyes are smart and they'll fill it in. I think that looks happy now. It seems like a happy, finished. I need to do something with the center of my flower. I don't need something. I'm going to come around it again with a thinner line, and that might be all it needs. Yeah, that feels better to me. All right, so I could take my white that seems to be still working well and just do a very subtle loop-de-loop around that center, kind of a teardrop petal that we added. I have a bold white and I have a medium. I need a fine tip white because I might have done that with more of a fine tip, but I think this medium's working okay. And see how that white stenciling's coming through? Isn't that a nice texture? Just gives you a little additional layer. And it looks like we worked so hard at getting all of these colors blended. But we know how easy it was to make that background. So we've got probably 5 more minutes in class and then I'll let you go. But please, as you get going, if you have more questions, ask me. I love it. And post your creations. I love to see it. And we can all use different ideas for doodling. I do think it's important to bring a white in to help brighten things up when you add a lot of black doodling. Gotta clean my pen. I hate to slow down, but it makes more sense to work with a pen that is working for you. Didn't that brighten that up? Great question, Karen. I would say this page, just so the other page is so busy. Now, if you want to give me a recommendation on the main page, something about you liked this class, and they should consider my classes, I would love to, I would appreciate that. But I think let's share our art on this page so we all see it. Okay, this one is still bugging me, so I'm going to come around with my smaller pen. And I could regret it, but it looks like a foreign object. It doesn't look like it goes together yet. So now I'm trying smaller dots. And if I regret it, I do. Oh well. Okay, it's getting there. I'll do something else when that's dry, but I think it's getting there. So when I'm done with my doodling, I will post this finished, we'll call it the class version. And let me put these side by side. So I want to see if I can get in the camera. Yeah, so you can see they're similar. I certainly started with one more in the center. And I built my next one, and this one's bigger. That doesn't matter. And then this is the biggest. And I didn't doodle here. I left that white, like the petal could be white. And I've done a lot more detail over here, but only 2 leaves. I've got 4 leaves going this time. Oh, and I've got the hiccups. And this was fun. I just saw this outline, so I might do that. Where I did just a loose outline and then added little dots, like maybe gems along them. So who knows? But sometimes I think it's good to take a step away. You know, go have some lunch or go have a phone call with a friend and then come back and take a look and do, you know, add some more. But when it starts to become work, then that's no fun. So yeah, they're similar, but they're different. And they're different backgrounds, right? Different colors popping through. All right, guys, I think that's it. Again, I love that I had a couple of you live following me along. It's more fun than just talking to myself and talking to a future audience. Thank you for joining us and following along. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, whatever time it is that you join us. And watch for my next class. I've really been enjoying masking in the background, so I want to show and play with that. And I want to find a free downloadable image that you would feel comfortable not having to draw, because a doodle draw is a lot different than if you want a butterfly or you want a bumblebee or something like that. So I do want to get that all put up, and then hopefully this is the March class, and that would be something coming up for April. All right, or future viewing at a later date, but I would launch it a month from now. All right, guys, thank you. I'm going to try to sign off this live. I'll keep an eye out for your posts. Thank you, Mandy. Thank you, Karen. Bye-bye.